You've been a homemaker since Charlie. How's that been going for you? Where do you stand now? What are some of the things you've learned that you would like to share, and perhaps even challenges too?
There's a lot that could be said, there's a lot that homemaking entails. Overall, it's been a positive experience. It's been very important, I think, to the, again, overall well-being of our children and of our family. I would recommend it to anybody who's able to make it work for their family. Not only does it provide you the space to breastfeed, because breastfeeding really is a full-time job, as they say, particularly in the early months, like in the first 6 months, for example, before they start being introduced to solids and stuff. But besides that, just being the primary caretaker, the primary influence, in your child's life versus some stranger that you've hired. Hopefully they don't stay a stranger. Hopefully, I know a lot of parents care a lot about who watches their children, and they do their best to find somebody who's, consistent and who they trust, and so on and so forth. But that can be really tough. And it's not you at the end of the day, I want to have that bond with my kids, and I'm able to have it by the grace of God, by the hard work of my husband, and by my own courage to do it too, right? Because sometimes it's a hard decision to make, leave what you know a lot of times. Some women were trained along those lines to be ready to be a homemaker, but I wasn't one of those, so that's not really what I knew. I knew, have a baby and go back to work, and so it's a sacrifice that requires a lot of courage, and it's just been worth every moment, every second. If I had to go back to work tomorrow, I'd be so grateful for all the years I had. I wouldn't trade them. It's worth it if you can only do it for a year. It's worth it if you can do it for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or through the whole upbringing of the child. Kind of reminds me of what I said about breastfeeding. When we were talking to the midwives, or any amount of breast milk is good for the child. You may end up having to supplement, you may stop your journey early or whatever the case, but 3 weeks of breastfeeding is still better than 2 days of breastfeeding if you can get to 3 weeks. And 3 months is better than 3 weeks, right? And 3 years is amazing. So likewise, the amount of time you can stay home and invest in your kids is worth it, even if eventually you have to go back to work, you can't sustain it, or whatever the case. Whatever length of time you can do that is a huge investment into your kids. Highly recommend.